Okay, namaskaram. So Sheila, my wife, and I, Vijay Pichmani, we are deeply honored that you have chosen to attend this class, which allows us to do this Kainkariam for Emperuman and Tayar. So we are very grateful for that. If I were Saint Tyagaraja, and I know that I'm not, I would be singing Dasharati Ni Runamu Dirpana Tarama, O son of Dasharatha, how can I ever repay your debt for making this Kainkariam possible? So thank you very much for joining us today. The next slide is just a reminder for me to start the recording, which I have done already. And I want to start by discussing a few details about this class. So this is a somewhat unorthodox class in the sense that we are not going to go through the Prabandham verses sequentially. What we are going to do instead is to sample a cross-section of the Divya Prabandhams. So in that sense, it's going to be more like a trailer. The movie will follow in a subsequent class. We will talk about that later. So there are 12 Azhvars who have composed the Divya Prabandhams. So I will take a few verses from each of those Azhvars, go through them, go through their meaning, we will chant them together, etc. So that's how we will do it. And after this 8-week class is done, then we can do an in-depth study of selected sections of various Azhvars. So I do plan to do that, and we will get to the details of that when we get to near the end of this class. So the idea in this class is more to motivate you for a deeper study later. And we will try to understand the meaning of all the verses or the pasurams that I will be teaching, so that you can really immerse yourself in the bhakti rasam, just the way the Azhvars did. And we will also learn to chant. So it's not just a textbook reading. We will also learn to chant. And non-objective, as I said, is a depth. We are not going to read, for example, if I teach Tirupallandu, there are 12 verses in Tirupallandu, but we're not going to learn all 12 verses. We will learn a few representative verses from that padiham. Now, a potential side effect, if you're not too careful, and I encourage you not to be too careful, you will become more knowledgeable in Tamil. Now, this class is taught in English because some of the people who are enrolled in the class, they are not very familiar with Tamil. Occasionally, what I will do is I will give the meanings in Tamil first, and then English will come a few seconds later if you are patient enough. You know, I kind of remember the old Tamil movies, the black and white Tamil movies from the 50s and 60s, when a character would occasionally speak a sentence in English. That's because he knows that the character he is speaking to understands English, but then he realizes that the audience that's watching the movie doesn't understand it, so he also says that in Tamil. To some extent, what we will do will be the opposite of that. If I say anything in Tamil, I will also translate that in English following that. Okay. Now, the verses that we go through, they will be taught in what is called the Santai Murai. So in Santai Murai, the way it works is that the teacher will say a phrase from the verse, and then the students will repeat that phrase 3 times, and then the teacher will say the next phrase once, and the students will repeat that phrase 3 times, and so on it goes. So it's a very effective means that has been practiced for centuries or millennia, and that helps the students learn the verses very easily. So we will try to follow that as much as possible. And we do plan to record and post the class as an unlisted YouTube video, and we will share the link. So we will do that over the next few days. And for privacy reasons, I will record my video only so that it doesn't show the participants. Now, to ask the questions, you can use chat, but I think that may not be effective because I probably may not be looking at the chat. But more but a better approach would be when I pause and open the floor to questions, you can unmute your microphone and ask questions. Now, some people may not be comfortable revealing themselves on camera, and that's okay. So revealing yourself on camera is optional. My hope is that at least when people join the class, they can keep their camera open so that they can greet me and I can greet them face to face. And similarly, at the end of the class, when the class is done and I've turned off the recording, they can do the same thing as well. And the slides that I'm using today, I think I plan to post the slides on Google Drive, and I'll send you the link for that as well. Now, this slide, it speaks to my credentials as an instructor, and you can see how dense it is. That's because there's not much to say about me. You know, I was a professor for a few years and an engineer in a tech company for several more. Other than that, I am what Winston Churchill would call a modest man who has a lot to be modest about. I'm not really a scholar, but I do come from a traditional family. My parents initiated me into the world of bhakti and slokas at a very young age. My father by example, and my mother by instruction. And so to them, or really to their memory, because they're both deceased now, I dedicate this class, and I hope they will bless it. I grew up in Tirunelveli, my father's hometown, but I was born in Madurai, my mother's hometown, and I never really let people forget that. So whenever someone said to me, "Do you know Tamil?" And I would say with all the shock and disbelief that I could muster, "Enna sir, eppadi sollitinga? Sangam vaittu Tamil valartha Maduraiyila pirandavan sir." So I would say that is, I was born in Madurai, where the Pandyan kings established sangams and fostered Tamil literature. So when I said that, I would say that with pride, you know, as if I had given birth to sangam literature myself. But history tells a different story, and over the years, I've kind of gotten used to that. But there was an advantage in being born in Madurai. It gave me an abiding interest in Tamil literature. So the way I look at the Nalayira Divya Prabandhams, they are not just an incredible repository of the bhakti sentiment. They are also an incredible piece of Tamil literature as well. So it's like having, you know, Terti Pal and Mysore Pak in one dessert. So I enjoy it on both of those counts. But still, the task that I have undertaken is huge. And in a sense, it kind of reminds me of Kamban as he set out to write the Kamba Ramayana. So Kamban, you know, there was a practice in those days when poets presented their output in a king's court. It's called Avai Adakkam. Avai means Havai, or gathering. Adakkam means humility. So Avai Adakkam means humility in a gathering. So whenever a great poet, presented their work to a king's court, for example, before plunging into the work, they would actually recite a few verses that they made up that supposedly show how unequal they are to the task that they have undertaken. And Kamban followed that practice as well. So the verse that you're seeing here is a verse from that Avai Adakkam. By the way, the convention that I'm using is that the Tamil verse will be in the top, the English transliteration will be in the next box, and the meaning will be in the box below. So what Kamban essentially said was that he was too greedy, but otherwise he was too unequal for the task. So he says, Asai Patri Arayalutrain. He says, seized by desire. I just want to make this arrow permanently visible so I don't have to keep looking for it. So he says, Asai Patri Arayalutrain, which means seized by greed. Asai means greed. I started narrating. Arayalutrain means narrating. What have I started narrating? Raman Kadai, the story of Rama. Kotrathu Raman Kadai, the story of King Rama. And what kind of Rama was he? Kasu il. Kasu means blemish. Il means without, so without any blemish, blemishless or flawless Rama. So just out of greed, I have started narrating the story of this flawless King Rama. But really, I'm so unequal to the task. And let me give you an analogy that would make this point clear and make it very clear how foolish I am to do that. And so he considers the analogy of a pune or a cat. Cats, as you know, they love milk. And they're used to, of course, licking up milk from a bowl, a shallow bowl. But imagine a cat that has reached the Parkadal, or the ocean of milk, Shirasagar, and it looks at this huge ocean. It's full of substance that it likes very much, Parkadal, and it says, oh my goodness, this is all milk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plunge in there and lick up all of this ocean. So that's effectively the analogy that he's using. So he's saying how foolish that would be. That's the kind of foolishness that I'm exhibiting by trying to negotiate this business of writing Ramayana. So he says, Osai Petru, that the ocean is roaring with waves. Where Parkadal, the glorious Parkadal Utru, reaching that Parkadal. Oru Pusai, Oru Pune, one cat. Mutravam, Murdumaga, fully. Nakkuvu Pukkana, அதை நக்கி குடிப்பதற்கென்று புகுந்தது போல, as if it wanted to empty that whole ocean just by licking it all up. With a similar kind of foolishness, I'm plunging into writing the story of Rama. Now, Kamban, of course, was a great poet, so there was perhaps a bit of false modesty in his making this claim. But I can assure you that there's nothing false about my modesty when I start talking about these 4,000 Divya Prabandhams. Anyway, so today I'm going to spend some time giving an introduction to all of Divya Prabandhams, but that in itself is vast. So instead of spending all of today doing that, because then I would not get to the verses today, what I will do is I'll spread that introduction part over a few weeks. But even in that introduction, when I say how great the Divya Prabandhams are, I may illustrate that with the help of a couple of examples here and there. And we will end up learning those verses themselves. And then once that introductory part, or whatever I plan to do today is over, then we will learn some of Periyarvar's verses. Is the first of the 12 Arvars, at least according to the order in which their verses are listed in the 4,000 Divya Prabandhams, not chronologically speaking. Chronologically speaking, there are other Arvars, Poigai Arvar, Bhudat Arvar, Pei Arvar, they are earlier than that. But anyway, we will learn a couple of verses of Periyarvar's Tirupallandu, and we will learn to chant them as well. Now, Divya Prabandhams, by way of introduction, they are 4,000 Tamil verses, and they are full of bhakti, devotion to Lord Vishnu. Now, one thing is that the Vaishnavites seldom use the word Vishnu, and therefore I will follow that convention as well. So instead, they will be using terms like Emperuman, or Sriman Narayanan, or Sriyapati, the consort of Sri Lakshmi, etc. So even though I may occasionally mention that refer to him by Lord Vishnu, really I will be using Emperuman or Sriman Narayanan, etc. more often. Now, the Divya Prabandhams are composed by 12 Arvars, and the Arvars are really Vaishnavite poet saints. And Divya Prabandham, Divya kind of means divine or holy. And Prabandham means a logically complete collection of verses. In other words, certain verses are grouped into a Prabandham, and they are logically complete, either according to the author or according to, say, Nathamuni, who compiled them all in the form in which we read them today. So they are logically complete. So what we think of as Divya Prabandhams is not really one collection of verses. It's really several Prabandhams, each a collection of logically complete collection of verses. In fact, there are 24 such Prabandhams that constitute Divya Prabandhams. And some of the Prabandhams are very short. There's one which actually has only one verse in it. On the other hand, Nammarvar's Thiruvaimuri, which is another Prabandham, is magnum opus. That has 1,100 verses in it. So there's a vast range of size when it comes to the Prabandhams. And the Divya Prabandhams are also known as Arvar Aruli Chayal. Arul means grace, and Chayal means work. So it's a work arising from the grace of the Arvar. So Arvar Aruli Chayal is a common name for Divya Prabandhams. And the Divya Prabandhams are also called Tamil Veda, also, or Dravida Veda. And I've written in Tamil letters, Tamil Marai. I like that word Marai because Marai means hidden. You know that expression, Maraindu nindru parkum marmam enna. So Marai means hidden. And the reason that Vedas are referred to as Marai is that some of their profound truths are not very obvious. They're not visible on the surface. They are really well hidden. And I'm not talking about the ritualistic part of the Vedas. I'm talking more about the Vedantas or the Upanishads, which talk about the profound philosophy of Hinduism. And those are quite hidden. So in that sense, the Vedas are called Marai. And the Divya Prabandhams, they are supposed to contain the essence of the Vedas, especially the philosophical part of Hinduism or the Upanishads. Now, when you call Divya Prabandhams Vedas, I also want to mention in that context an expression that is often used. If you look at a typical wedding invitation, the Tamil part of a wedding invitation in Tamil Nadu, for example, a Brahmin wedding invitation, it will say at the top, Sri Ubha or Uve, and then a blank line on which the name of the recipient is supposed to be filled in, then Swami Sannidhikku. That Uve means Ubhaya Vedanta. Ubhaya means both. Vedanta, of course, that means Vedanta. So one versed in both Vedantas. So really that's an honor given to the recipient of the wedding invitation. What it means is that that recipient is supposedly an expert in the Sanskrit Vedas, the original Vedas, and the Tamil Vedas, which are the Divya Prabandhams. Okay, so that kind of demystifies what Uve means. And also the Divya Prabandhams are so important that they are recited in temples. For example, in Kovil Purapadus, or temple procession, there will be a group chanting the Divya Prabandhams that walks ahead of the Lord. And then there will be another group chanting the Sanskrit Vedas that walks behind the Lord. And some of the Upanyasakas would kind of make fun of this by saying that the Lord is not interested anymore in the Sanskrit Vedas. So he has kind of passed them, and he is trying to catch up with the people who are reciting the Tamil Vedas so that he could hear them and immerse himself in the enjoyment of those verses. And talking of immersing, Arvar by itself generally means that Bhaktil Arndu Emperumanai Anubhavittavargal. So Bhakti enum kadalil Arndu Emperumanai Anubhavittavargal. So these are people who immerse themselves in the ocean of Bhakti toward Emperuman. And so those are the Arvars. And we will try to do at least a fraction of that in this class. Now, I mentioned previously that the 4,000 Divya Prabandhams, Nalayira Divya Prabandhams, are really made up of 24 Prabandhams. So this table is an enumeration of those 24 Prabandhams. So I've given the names of those Prabandhams in Tamil and also in English. And also how many pasurams. Pasurams is the Tamil word for verses. How many pasurams there are, and who the author of these are, who the authors are. So Periyarvar has written one Prabandham called Periyarvar Tirumuri, and that has 473 pasurams in it. And there's no other Prabandham that he has written. However, if you look at Andal, for example, she has written Tirupavai, and of course many of you are familiar with the 30 verses in Tirupavai. And she has also written something called Nachiyar Tirumuri, which has 143 verses in it, okay? And then it so goes on. So I'm not planning to walk through every one of these Prabandhams, because when we start going through individual verses, individual arvas, by the way, I hear some noise on the line. So whoever is not muted, if you can mute yourself, I would appreciate that very much. Thank you. So whenever we talk about the individual arvas, we will talk about the Prabandhams that they have composed as well. But I just want to mention certain highlights. For example, there are many things that are listed as Tiruvantadis. Now, Tiruvantadis mean the following thing. The Divya Prabandhams by themselves are pieces of literature. So they are pieces of poetry. So they conform to the rigorous meter and rhyme that is specific to that particular form of poetry that is used. But in some cases, they have gone beyond that and they have imposed additional constraints on themselves, and those are antadis. Antadis is kind of like antakshari, where the anta means end, adi means beginning. So anta, the ending word of one verse, is also the beginning word of the next verse. So there are many, for example, the Mudal Tiruvandadi has 100 verses, and all the 100 verses follow that rule. For example, the end of the first verse is the beginning of the second verse. The end of the second verse is the beginning of the third verse, and so on. And in fact, some of them are not listed as antadis, but they are antadis as well. If you look at Tiruvaimuri, for example, which has 1100 verses, 1100 plus verses, it is an antadi as well. So just imagine the creativity of Sri Nammarvar in creating 1100 verses, all of which conform to that restriction. The last word of each verse is the beginning word of the next verse, and this on top of conforming to all the rigorous specifications of the form of poetry. Okay. Now, in addition to the 12 Azhvars, there is one person, Tiruvarangat Amudanar, who has written something called Ramanuja Nutrandadi, and that is also considered part of the Nalayira Divya Prabandhams by many people, and that also brings the total number to 4,000. Okay, so the interesting thing about Ramanuja Nutrandadi is that it's all about the Acharya, Ramanuja Nutrandadi, not really about the Emperuman. It's more about Emperumanar, as Ramanuja was known, but still is considered as part of Nalayira Divya Prabandhams. And in a similar way, this Kanninun Siruttambu, these 11 verses of Madhura Kavi Azhvar, they're not about Emperuman himself. They are really about Sri Nammarvar, that's the Acharya of Madhura Kavi Azhvar. And so yet they are listed as part of Nalayira Divya Prabandhams, because there is a great significance associated with this particular Prabandham. I will talk about that later when I talk about Madhura Kavi Azhvar. Okay? Okay, so that's a kind of a brief introduction to all the Prabandhams. Now, before you start reciting a Prabandham, you will recite something called the taniyans. So let me explain that in a moment. So let's take Periyarvar Tirumuri as an example. It is written by Periyarvar, and there are 473 verses. By the way, when I say there are 473 verses, it's not one monolithic thing of 473 verses. They're broken up into lots of smaller parts, usually each having about 10 to maybe 12 verses, for example. So in that sense, it is broken up into to hierarchy, if you will. But if you want to recite any of those verses of Periyarvar, by the way, so these verses are all composed by Periyarvar, and they are Tamil verses. But before you do that, you will kind of pay respect to Periyarvar by reciting some verses written about Periyarvar by other acharyas, and those are called taniyans. So here is, so there's something called Periyarvar Tirumuri taniyans, and there are 3 verses in that category, and they are specific to this particular Prabandham, namely the Periyarvar Tirumuri. And these 3 verses, they are not composed by Periyarvar. They are composed about the glory of Periyarvar or his Prabandham, which is Periyarvar Tirumuri in this case. And these 3 verses, one of them is in Sanskrit, and there are 2 in Tamil, and these are composed by other acharyas. So really, before you plunge into Periyarvar, reciting Periyarvar Tirumuri, generally the practice is to recite the 3 verses that glorify Periyarvar and then go on to do this. Now, what we will do is we will learn one of those taniyans today, but then we will try to learn the other taniyans in the future class. Because the unfortunate thing is that this is a zero-sum game. Any time you spend in talking about the taniyans is a time that is taken away from learning the actual verses of Periyarvar himself. So in that sense, we will go slow with regard to learning the taniyans, but we will try to do as much justice to them as possible. But if you're talking about some other Prabandham, like say Tiruvaimuri of Sri Nammarvar, then there are taniyans that are specific to Tiruvaimuri. They may not be 3 in number, they may be 4, they may be 5, or just 2, for example. So we will learn those taniyans, and then we will recite them before reciting Tiruvayumari. So there are taniyans that are Prabandham specific, okay? But then there are also taniyans that are common to all of Divya Prabandhams, and they are called Podu taniyans. Podu in Tamil means common, and so the common taniyan. So really then if you want to recite Periyarvar Tirumari, before that you have to recite the Periyarvar Tirumari taniyans, but before that you have to recite the so-called Podu taniyans, which are 5 verses in number. And these verses, again, they're not written by any of the Azhvars themselves. They are usually written by some other great people like Acharyas. And so they are verses about the glory of Acharyas, Azhvars, or their work. And these 5 verses, they're all in Sanskrit. So we will learn one of these verses today. So we will learn one of these Podu taniyans today. We will learn one of the Periyarvar Tirumari taniyans. And then we'll try to learn some of the pasurams of Periyarvar. So here is a Podu taniyan. I mentioned that there are 5 Podu taniyans. And so these will be recited regardless of which specific Prabandham you are going to talk about. Now this is really the number 2 of the 5 verses. And as I said, all those 5 taniyans are in Sanskrit. So this one is also in Sanskrit. And it's kind of a salutation to the lineage of Acharyas. So if you look at this, so here's the convention. So I first gave that taniyan in the Devanagari script, and then a transliteration in English, and then the actual meaning in English. This taniyan is composed by Sri Kuratarvan, who was a great disciple of Sri Ramanuja, perhaps the most famous disciple of Sri Ramanuja. And this is about paying respect to the lineage or the chain of gurus. So if you look at the last line, it says, Vande, Nan Vanangahiren, or I salute, or I worship. Guru paramparam. Guru means teacher or Acharya. Paramparam means or the lineage. So I worship the lineage of Acharyas, Acharya paramparais. That's the last line of this verse. And then it goes on to say, who is at the beginning of this chain? Arambham. Arambham, as you probably know, even in Tamil, Arambham means beginning. So it tells you who is at the beginning of this chain of Acharyas. Madhyamam. Madhyamam means who is in the middle of that chain. And middle doesn't mean exactly at the 50% midway point. It's somewhere in the middle. And then Paryantam. Paryantam means up to. Okay, so really the beginning, the middle, and the end. So it says here, Lakshmi Natha Samarambham. Lakshmi Natha, the Lord of the consort of Lakshmi, that's of course Emperuman. So Emperuman is the Arambham of this lineage of Acharyas, okay? And then Natha Yamuna Madhyamam. Natha Muni is in the middle of this chain. Now this Natha Muni is a great Acharya, and in fact, he has a considerable significance with respect to Divya Prabandhams. The fact that we are here today talking about Divya Prabandhams owes as much to Natha Muni as it does to the Azhvars themselves. Because the Azhvars composed the verses, the pasurams, but they were lost. And it was Natha Muni who, by his Herculean effort, retrieved those pasurams. So as I often say, a pasuram lost is a pasuram never composed, because it has the same effect anyway. So Natha Muni is the one who was responsible for retrieving all those pasurams, and therefore he plays a very great role with regard to the Nalayara Divya Prabandhams, and it's only very fitting that the Podu taniyans chooses to honor him. And then the last one says, up to Paryantam, up to Asmad Acharya. Asmad means my, Acharya. Acharya means, of course, Guru. Now remember that this was composed by Kuratarvan, and Kuratarvan really had Ramanuja in his mind. So when he said Asmad Acharya, he was really referring to Sri Ramanuja. So he was really paying homage to the lineage of Acharyas down to and including his own Acharya, Sri Ramanuja. But for whatever reason, he didn't mention him by name, which turns out to be very convenient for us. I don't know whether you call it a bug or a feature, but the net effect of this is that you can say that today, and you would have extended it all the way down to your Acharya, Asmad Acharya Paryantam, okay? So in that sense, the chain has been extended all the way to our own acharyas when we say this. Okay, so that's very convenient for us. Now this picture here kind of shows the lineage of the gurus or the lineage of acharyas. I don't know why it shows it as a kind of a closed loop. The way I look at it, it's a chain. It is open at, it should be open at one end. But at the top here is the very first guru, that is Emperuman. And then after the Emperuman is the next Acharya is the Tayar. Tayar is Lakshmi. Tayar in Tamil means mother or mother goddess. And then after that is Vishwaksenar. Vishwaksenar is the general of Emperuman's army. And then Sri Nammarvar. So there are letters here that you may not be able to read it, but I'll post it so you can read it better. So Nammarvar, and then Sri Nathamuni, then Uyyakondar, Manakkal Nambi, Sri Alavandar, Periya Nambi, Sri Ramanuja, and it goes on. Okay, so that's the chain that we are talking about when we pay respects to that chain of acharyas. So what I would like to do is this. I think as the first verse that we learned today. So this is the verse that I'm planning to teach you, and then we will go and look at other verses as well. So what you can do is this. You can unmute yourselves at the moment, right now, and then I will say the first line, and then you can repeat it 3 times. I'll say the second line, you can repeat it 3 times, etc. Okay. So now I asked Zoom tech support about multiple people talking at the same time, and they said that the conference will carry 4 voices, up to 4 voices. And I asked them, what if 5 people are talking or 6 people are talking? And they said that, well, the 4 loudest voices will be heard. So I think we are going to find out today who those 4 loud mouths are in this group. And by the way, that's a compliment. Okay, so let me start, and then you can repeat after me, okay? Lakshmi Nata Samarambham.
Lakshmi Nata Samarambham. Lakshmi Nata Samarambham. Lakshmi Nata Samarambham.
Natayamuna Madhyamam.
Natayamuna Madhyamam. Natayamuna Madhyamam.
Asmadacharya Padyantam.
Asmadacharya Padyantam. Asmadacharya Padyantam.
Vande Guru Paramparam.
Vande Guru Paramparam. Vande Guru Paramparam. Vande Guru Paramparam.
Okay, so that's good. So that you're getting to know you're getting the hang of the Santayam, right? So what I will do now is I will now recite the whole thing without pausing, and you can recite it with me, since you have had some experience. So wait for me to start and then just join and recite it along with me, okay? Lakshmi Nata
Samarambham. Natayamuna Madhyamam.
Madacharya Padyantam.
Paramparam.
Okay, that's good. Okay. So maybe what I will do is sometimes I might say, recite it with me, but keep it muted, because that way sometimes I hear a kind of a feedback loop. So we will do that occasionally, okay? Okay, so that was so that's the first verse that we have learned today. It's a Podu Taniyan. It's one of the 5 that we have learned today, that we will learn the others as we go along. Now before I get into specific Azhvars, I want to mention that talk about what is great about, by the way, you can mute yourself. All of you can mute yourselves. Thank you. So before I start talking about, I will start talking about Periyarvar and then Andal and so on. But before I do that, I want to say something about what is so great about these Divya Prabandhams, okay? So I just wanted to give a couple of examples. If I say something very abstract, like they embody absolute unconditional surrender, as it says at the top of the slide, it won't mean anything to you. Or if I say they show, absolute love toward the Emperuman, again, it will not make any sense to you, because you need a concrete example. So what I have done is I have taken a verse which I think illustrates each of those aspects that I'm going to talk about. So one is the Divya Prabandhams embody absolute unconditional surrender. Okay, the example that I have taken is from Kulasekara Azhvars Perumal Tirumuri. So he's one of the 12 Azhvars. He was actually a Chera king. That shows you what a wide variety of social strata the Azhvars have come from. This particular one was actually a king. In fact, he's the only Azhvar who has also written in Sanskrit. If you have heard of Mukundamala, that Mukundamala was written by Kulasekara Azhvar. So anyway, he has written a Prabandham called Perumal Tirumuri, and this is a part of that Perumal Tirumuri. And it's a very beautiful verse, but what he is saying is this. Let me first summarize the meaning. The meaning is at the bottom here. He's essentially saying, I take refuge in your feet, and it doesn't matter whether you take care of me or not. And that's a great sentiment. So he's saying that my surrender to you is not conditional upon your anugraham, that your grace, you're showing me your grace. No matter what you do, even if you spurn me, I will still surrender to you. So that is the absolute unconditional surrender that he is talking about. But then he's also giving an analogy. So that's what I said when I mentioned that the Divya Prabandhams are beautiful poetry. And poetry often has good analogies. Giving analogies is a very important aspect of good poetry. So he gives an analogy as well. Okay, so let me first start going through the lines. He says, Taru tuyaram tadayel. Tuyaram means the tribulations. Tadayel means if you don't stop it, tadukka vidil. So it means tarihinni yanakku tarum tuyarangalai tadukka vittalum kuda. Even if you don't stop the tribulations that you give me. Of course, you giving me simply means that, after all, you have earned what you're getting by means of your karma, for example, but he's just referring to everything as inflicted by the Emperuman himself. So he says, even if you don't stop the tribulations that you inflict upon me, un charan allal charan illai. Now, you may have, when you recite Sri Venkatesha Suprabhatam and Prapatti, for example, you may have recited something that said, Sri Venkatesha Charanau Sharanam Prapadye. Well, Charanau Sharanam Prapadye, that Charanau and Sharanam are actually different words. Charanau means feet, Sharanam means taking refuge. But when you map them into Tamil, they both become one word because Tamil doesn't have the sound sha, okay? So both Charanam and Charanau and Sharanam, they both become the same thing. So here the first one is feet, the second one is refuge. So he says, One charan allal charan illai. Apart from your feet, I have no other refuge. That's effectively what it says. So even if you don't stop all the tribulations I encounter, I have nowhere to go except you. And then this particular pasuram is also a pasuram about a particular sthalam called Vittuva Kodu in Kerala. So when we talk about 108 Divya Desams, for example, that 108 Divya Desams are really listed based on the fact that some Azhvar has glorified that particular shrine. So otherwise, it cannot belong in the list of Divya Desams. So the Vittuva Kodu shrine, for example, Vittuva Kodu Sthalam, has been glorified by Kulasekara Azhvar. And so this particular pasuram is one of those. And people would use the word Mangala Shasanam to refer to that. So people would say, Azhvar in the Sthalatha Mangala Shasanam Pannirukar, which means that the Azhvar has done Mangala Shasanam of this Sthalam, which is just another way of saying he has spoken in glory of the Lord at this Sthalam, okay? So in the second line here, he's really talking about that Sthalam. And usually when they talk about the Sthalam, they will talk about the village or the town in which it is located, how beautiful it is, and so on, okay? So that's effectively what the second line is. By the way, the asterisks are pauses. That is, when you recite them formally, you will pause wherever the asterisks are. And this particular symbol in the beginning, it means that this particular verse needs to be recited twice. So if you're reciting a whole set of, say, 10 verses, for example, then this particular verse will have to be recited twice before you go on to the next verse. And then I've also underlined a couple of things here. So there's double R here. So usually when people recite it in temples, instead of calling it Vitruva Kotammane, they will call it Vittuva Kotammane. So the double R, so you can pronounce it as either TR. So that's what I've written here. Pronounce RR as either TR, that is Vitruva Kotammane, or just TT, Vittuva Kotammane. So I like to normally pronounce it as TR. The reason is that when you pronounce it as TT, you'll find that it creates some ambiguities in meaning. I'll give an example later, but for the time being, I give you the flexibility. You can pronounce it either way you want, but when you do listen to temple goshtis reciting these verses, you will find that they, wherever you see this RR, they will pronounce it as TT, okay? So they will say, Virai Kuruvam Malarporil Sur Vittuva Kotammane. So it means, oh Lord of Vittuva Kodu, that is Vittuva Kotammane, and you are Malarporil Sur, Malargal Nerainda, Porilgal means garden, Nandavanangal Surundirukum, Vittuva Kotu Ammane. So, oh Lord, who is surrounded by beautiful flower gardens that are fragrant, Virai Kuruvam means fragrant. So, and then he goes on to give the analogy. He says, Arisinatal, from great anger, Indratai, Ahatridinam, that is, even if a child's own mother, if she spurns him, Chipo, now me pesmate, ni romba asadarke, or something like that. So even if the mother says something like that and then she just goes away, what is the child going to do? The baby is not going to say, okay, I'll go look for another mother. Instead, that baby is going to cry and wait for the grace of that same mother. That's effectively what he is saying. Arisinatal indratai ahatridinam. From great anger, even if a mother spurns her child, matru aval tan, that same mother's, arul ninainde, arul means grace, arum kuravi. Kuravi means kuranda. It doesn't mean kuravi as in ammi and kuravi, the one you use to make, say, tohel, for example. It's not that kind of kuravi, but kurandai, it's a baby. Aval arul ninainde, arum kuravi, aduve pondrilindene. So even if the mother spurns the baby is going to cry for the grace of his mother, and I am just like that. So to me, it's very beautiful because it gives an analogy that I can very easily relate to. And this is just one of about 10 pasurams that he has written, where the central idea is the same, but the analogy just keeps changing from one verse to another. So when we start talking about Kulasekara Azhvar, we will see the other analogies that he has used as well, okay? So having said that, then now we can learn this in the Santai Murai. So what I will do is I will recite a phrase up to an asterisk. So you'll have to wait until I get to an asterisk, and then you can repeat it 3 times, then wait for the next phrase, etc. Okay? So maybe you can unmute yourself, and then we can see how it goes, okay? So unmute yourself. Okay. Tarutuyaram tadayel.
Tarutuyaram tadaye, tarutuyaram tadaye, tarutuyaram tadaye,
Un saranallal saranillai.
un saranallal saranillai, saranallal saranillai, un saranallal saranillai.
Virai Kuruvum Malarporil Sur.
Virai Kuruvum Malarporil Sur. Virai Kuruvum Malarporil Sur.
Vittuvakotammane.
Vitruvakotammane, Vitruvakotammane,
Arisinattal Indratai. Ahatridinam. மற்றவள்தன் அருள் நினைந்தே அழும் குழவி
மற்றவள் தன் அருள் மற்றவள் தன் அருள் நினைந்தே அழும் குழவி மற்றவள் தன் நினைந்தே அழும் குழவி
அதுவே போன்றிருந்தேனே
அதுவே போன்றிருந்தேனே அதுவே போன்றிருந்தேனே
Okay. So what I'm going to do is this. You can mute yourselves now, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a kind of a goshti that is reciting this particular verse, okay, and I'm going to play it back slowly to you. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this feature in YouTube. So in YouTube, there is a way to adjust the speed at which it is being played. So I've set it to 75% speed, okay? So it will play it at 75% speed. I used to think that when you slow something down, it will change the pitch as well, but it doesn't. So it will still be at the same pitch, which is really amazing. You know, if you remember the gramophone from old days, you know, where you wind up a spring and then you let it play, it didn't have good speed control. So as it played, you know, it became slower and slower. So what started out as an M.S. Subbulakshmi Kriti eventually became M.D. Ramanathan's, you know, by the time the spring ran out of energy, for example. But this one is not like that at all. So that's the reason that I like it very much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this goshti. So you can mute yourself. You'll be playing at slow speed. And it may be at a different pitch than I recited it. So but you will get used to it. So once you listen to the phrase, you will get used to it. What I would like you to do is to try to say it along with the goshti itself, but with your microphones muted. So that way we won't have feedback, etc. Okay, and that way you can also hear the goshti. Okay, and then this will be recited by them twice. So they will go through the full verse, and then they will recite it again, because this symbol says it should be recited twice. Okay. Okay. So get ready to recite it without unmuting. Keep yourself muted, and here we go. Okay, so now you have the experience of actually chanting it as part of a temple goshti. So I hope you like that experience. It's really very pleasant to say it as part of the goshti. Usually somebody will say the first two lines, and so another person will say the next two lines, and then they will keep alternating. Okay. Okay, so that's the Kulasekara Azhvars Pasuram that I wanted to give as an example of unconditional surrender. Now that particular Pasuram is, as I said, it does Mangala Shasanam to the Tiruvittuvakodu temple. This is located in Kerala, and it's a picture of the temple and picture of the Perumal there. The Perumal there is called Uyyavanda Perumal. Uyyavanda means Ennai Uivippadarkaga Vanda Perumal, one who came to save me. So that's what Uyyavanda Perumal means. So the location is Kerala, and the Moolavar is called Uyyavanda Perumal, also Abhaya Pradhan. Tayar has the name of Vittuvakotuvalli and Padmapani Nachiyar. And the Tirukkolam is the presentation of the posture, is Nindra Tirukkolam, standing Tirukkolam. And it's kind of important to Vaishnavas. So there are three major Tirukkolams: the standing, the sitting, and the lying down. Nindra Tirukkolam, Irunda Tirukkolam, Kidanda Tirukkolam. But anyway, and this particular temple has been mentioned in the Asurams 10 times, and all of them by Kulasekara Arva. Okay. Okay, I want to mention one other example of something great about Divya Prabandhams, and it is that they embody absolute love for Emperuman. And the example that I've taken is a verse of Periyarvar himself. And so here, so Periyarvar has written a whole set of verses, probably about 100 or so verses, in which he imagines himself to be Yashoda herself. So he puts himself in the role of little Krishna's foster mother, Yashoda being Krishna's foster mother. And so he talks with so much love about the child that this Yashoda is bringing up. So imagine that whenever I talk about Yashoda now, this Yashoda I'm talking about is Periyarvar in the body of Yashoda, okay? Now, the amazing thing about this is that this Yashoda, that is a Periyarvar, assuming the role of Yashoda, on the one hand, in some verses, you will see that she thinks of Krishna as a very fragile child, just like any other child. And so she really cares about him a lot. She worries about all the bad things that can happen to him, etc. But in some other verses, she realizes that he is not just an ordinary child. He's the Lord of the universe. And in fact, in some verses, you can see both of those facets. In fact, sometimes even in a single line, you can look at both aspects of it. And to me, that's very interesting, because on the one hand, she talks about how great he is, the fact that he is in Srirangam and Tirukoshtiur and all those places. And in the next line, she worries about some misfortune that can befall him. So I find that to be very, very interesting. Maybe not something that the actual Yashoda went through. But in this particular verse, Yashoda is being very hard on herself because she has committed a great sin. What sin has she committed? She has sent little Krishna after the cows or after the calves into the forest. And she has done that without giving him any umbrella, without giving him any sandals. And this forest, she says, is very harsh. You know, there are very prickly stones all over the place, and it's a very hot forest and so on. And so she is really very unsparing in her criticism of herself. So that's what this whole thing is about, okay? So she says, let me first talk about the key word here. She says, Kodiyen. So Kodiyen means, oh my goodness, what a cruel person I have been. எவ்வளவு கொடியவனாக இருந்திருக்கிறேன் நான். That's what she's saying. And then it says here, en பிள்ளையை போக்கினேன். Let me go back to bringing that arrow to a visible form. So it says here, கொடியேன் என் பிள்ளையை போக்கினேன். ரொம்ப கொடியவளாகிய நான் என் பிள்ளையாகிய கிருஷ்ணனை காட்டுக்கு அனுப்பி வைத்தேன். எல்லே பாவமே. Oh my goodness. எவ்வளவு பெரிய பாவம் செய்து விட்டேன். What a wicked thing I have done. And then she goes on to describe the details of this. Kudayum seruppum kodade. I did not give him an umbrella. I did not give him a sandals. Damodaranai. Damodaran is another name for Krishna. The origin of Damodaran is that it comes from two words. Dama means rope. That's why I have this picture here. And Udara means waist. So Krishna, as you know, was tied to the mortar by Yashoda with a rope. And so anyway, that's why it's called Damodaran. So Damodaranainan, Udayum. So now she describes all the hardships that he will face in the forest. She talks specifically about how, because she hasn't given sandals to little Krishna, she talks about how harsh the ground is going to be. And she piles adjective upon adjective to explain how harsh that ground is. So she says it's filled with pararkal, stones. What kind of stones? Then you'll find many adjectives. Udayam, udainda karkal. These are broken stones, and therefore they are sharp. Kadiyana, they are very hard. Undru, they are very prickly. Vem pararkal, vem means hot, because from the hot sun. Vem pararkal udai. So she's saying that the stones are broken, sharp, hard, prickly, and hot, and so on. Udayam kadiyana, undru vem pararkal udai. Kadiya venkanidai. Kanam means Kadu, Ganagam means Kadu. Venganam means a hot forest. Kadiya again means inhospitable. So to that inhospitable hot forest, Kadiyavan Ganadai, Kaladi Nova, Kandrin Pin, Avanudaya Kal Adi Nohumbadi, that is in a way that his tender feet will get hurt. I have sent him Kandrin Pin behind the cows. Kudiyen, Evlavu Periya Kodiyavul Nan, what a cruel person I am. L.A. Pavame, Evlavu Periya Pavam Seidu Vittain. Now the key thing to note here is that she has not done anything different from what the other Ayar party mothers have done. But it's just that she loves her child so much that whatever she has done, that seems like a great injustice to her. You know, I remember the first day that Sheila and I sent our first child to preschool. The very first day we felt absolutely awful. We felt as if we had thrown him to the wolves and left him to fend for himself. And it doesn't matter that, you know, millions of other mothers have done something similar and nothing has happened to their children. So that's exactly what love is. You know, that's why I have this statement at the bottom here, where love abounds, reason takes a backseat. And that's exactly what you will find in this verse, okay? So what I will do is I'll recite this verse in the Santai. You can repeat after me 3 times, but with the microphone muted because there's too much echo. So what I will do is I'll recite it once, and then when you are reciting it 3 times, I will recite it, but in a softer tone, so you can still barely hear me, okay? So that way I can time myself, okay? Kudayum seruppum kodade, Kudayum seruppum kodade, Kudayum seruppum kodade, Kudayum seruppum kodade, Damodaranai nan, Damodaranai nan, Udayum kadiyana, Udayum kadiyana, ஊன்றுவெம் பரற்களுடை, ஊன்றுவெம் பரற்களுடை, கடியவெங்கானிடை, காலடி நோவக் கன்றென் பெண், காலடி நோவக் கன்றென் பெண், கொடியேன் என் பிள்ளையைப் போக்கினேன், கொடியேன் என் பிள்ளையைப் போக்கினேன், எல்லே பாவமே, எல்லே பாவமே. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a goshti reciting it. What I would, so this will be I'll play it twice, okay? So get ready. You can chant it with yourself muted, so that way there won't be any feedback. So I'll play it twice. Go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be done in just a couple of minutes, if you will bear with me. So you learn to recite this verse as well. So I'll send you the YouTube links so you can say it along with those links. Now, after I prepared this slide, I thought I should look at the internet for pictures that show Krishna suffering in the forest. And so the closest thing that I found was something like this. Okay, so this is the child that Yashoda was worried about. And she really does have good reasons to be worried, doesn't she? So that's the point that I'm making at the bottom of this slide. I think the point is that mothers will worry, and I don't mean to single out mothers. Mothers and fathers will worry. It's their reason for existence in this world. But in a similar way, Yashoda was worried unnecessarily about Krishna. But when you listen to her verses, you would feel her pain, as if just like when you felt the pain when you sent your child to school on that first day. Okay. Now, I'm not able to get to Periyarvar's Tirupallandu today because we are running out of time. So what I will do is I will just finish with what is called a Charana Slokam. So remember that at the beginning of reciting Prabandhams, you recite the taniyans. In a similar way, when you're done, you can recite the so-called Charana Slokams. So I'm going to recite 2 Charana Slokams today. Here they are, okay? So if you're already familiar with it, you can say it along with me. One is taken from the Bhagavad Gita. It's called the Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mame. Yeah, so let me say that if you know it, you can recite it along with me. Again, you can mute yourself so that way there won't be any feedback, okay? Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Ma Suchaha. Okay, if you want to say that, maybe I can say it and then pause. Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Okay, you go now 3 times. Sarva Dharman Parityajya. Sarva Dharman Parityajya.
Mamekam
Sharanam Vraja.
Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Mamekam Sharanam Vraja. Mamekam Sharanam Vraja.
Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo.
Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo. Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo.
Mokshayishyami Ma Suchaha.
Mokshayishyami Ma Shutaha. Mokshayishyami Ma Shutaha. Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha.
Okay, and the last one is it's a Mangalam Kosalendraya, supposed to be written by Sri Manavala Mamunigar. Again, what I would ask is you mute yourself when you recite it after me. So that way, when multiple people are reciting, one will not interfere with another. So you can mute yourself and you repeat it 3 times. I'll pause in the middle of each line. Okay, so the halfway point of each line. So Mangalam Kosalendraya, Mangalam Kosalendraya, Mangalam Kosalendraya, Mangalam Kosalendraya, Mahaniya Gunabdhaye, Mahaniya Gunabdhaye, Mahaniya Gunabdhaye, Mahaniya Gunabdhaye, Chakravarti Tanujaya, Chakravarti Tanujaya, Chakravarti Tanujaya, Chakravarti Tanujaya, Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam, Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam, Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam, Sarvabhaumaya Mangalam. Okay, so with that, I will stop today's lesson. So some of the things that I intended to do today, I will do them next week, okay? Thank you all for attending the class today. So I'm going to stop the recording so that if you want to stay, anyone who wants to stay,